Alden. Great, thank you, Kate. So yeah, welcome. And our for today, we're having our guest speaker, Brooke Alden and Charlene Sitar from the town of Hinton Family and Community Support Services on Protect Your Assets, a fraud and scam awareness program. Then we'll go over a few resources and then just a reminder about our next meeting in November. So I will stop sharing and hand this over to Brooke for their presentation. There we go. That's great. There, we can see it just fine. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Brooke. Thank you, Helen, so much for that. The invitation for Brooke and I to attend today. I hope everyone can hear me well enough. I am just getting over the cold that the rest of the world has had, and so I apologize if I have to stop from time to time to take a sip of water or clear my throat, just like that. So again, thank you so much. We're going to run through our Protect Your Assets program today and give you a bit of a history, then do an overview of the program, and then kind of wind things up with next steps. So thank you, Brooke, for joining me today as well. So I'm going to introduce Brooke as well as myself. So Brooke Alden is the Family Life Coordinator here at FCSS in Hinton, and she is now the Protect Your Assets lead champion in our community. And I am Charlene Sitar, and I'm the Elder Abuse Supports Navigator. I've been working in the field of elder abuse prevention and response for 9 years, and have been a part of the Protect Your Assets program since we began it in the spring of 2023. You'll see. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Brookie. Oh, you're just waving?
Yeah, so you know who I am.
Oh, okay. Thanks so much. And I do refer to Brooke sometimes as Brookie, so I apologize for that, Brooke. Old habits die hard. You'll see on this particular slide, there are two graphics, which I just have Brooke and I's name on them. And so these are examples of what our lanyards look like when we go out and do presentations in the community. So any of the champions who are involved in our project and the older adults who are coming along for this ride of Protect Your Assets and doing presentations are each given a lanyard badge that looks like this with their name on it. So thank you. Brooke, next slide, please. So I think it's important for everyone to have an understanding of why we started the Protect Your Assets program in our community. And it was really a response to the growing number of referrals we were seeing in FCSS Hinton that were related to frauds and scams of older adults. So people who were being victimized by a fraudster, who were experiencing emotional impact, financial impact from these frauds and scams, even if the scams were $300, it takes an emotional toll on anyone. And then people who, family members as well, who were inquiring about what they can do to support a family member who had fallen victim to a fraud or scam, and they were concerned about not only their financial but their emotional and potentially physical well-being after a fraud or scam. We were finding that there were reports of a heightened level of fear and anxiety among older individuals who had become victimized through a fraud. And then we wanted to also address what we saw as a lack of local resources in our community that provided ongoing information and response beyond the law enforcement, beyond the RCMP response, which is crucially important with these crimes, but quite often they are not in a position that a crime can even be proven potentially, or their ability to assist the individual was limited because there just was no way of people for them to track things, and the scammers got away. And so there was also nothing that the RCMP, beyond resources that were, federal or provincial or from an organization outside of our community, where they could just hand a pamphlet and say, this is what's available in our community, and this is some ongoing information, and these are some ongoing supports. So those are the reasons why we wanted to look at developing an initiative that was community-led, grassroots-led. Go ahead, next slide, Brooke. So the other thing we wanted that we became keenly aware of, and I don't think it will be a surprise to anyone here, that and the internet is full of stats and information to back all of these kinds of things up, where although older adults aren't necessarily victimized more than the average person, everyone can become a victim of a fraud or scam. It doesn't matter what your age is. Anyone can be a victim of these crimes. But older adults are actively targeted by fraudsters because of the perception of, or the reality of, that exists in older people's lives, that older people are socially isolated. They don't have the social interaction that maybe would allow them to reach out and ask questions of someone else. There are changes associated with the aging process that might provide or provide a challenge for people when trying to navigate through accessing some support. Maybe there's a lack of understanding, or fraudsters feel that there's a perception out there that older people have a lack of understanding of technology, so they're easier fooled. And as well, the older generation tends to have a bit of a higher level of trust or ease of manipulation, or that's a perception that fraudsters have, building that relationship with them to trick them into the next steps, as well as and you can Google this, the great wealth transfer. We have our silent generation and our baby boom generation are the wealthiest generation in history. And so we have been told to save our money, to prepare for retirement. We have more expendable wealth at our fingertips than any other generation in history. It's $1 trillion, out floating. I shouldn't say floating around out there, but there's access to over trillions of dollars that older people we have saved in preparation for planning quality of life steps for ourselves that fraudsters find very attractive. Yeah, but what I want to also say is that it's not just wealthy older adults that are victimized by scammers. People who are low income can also be victimized in this manner. Next slide, Brooke. So the first phase of our initiative was to apply for grant funding through the New Horizons for Seniors federal grant initiative. And we were able to secure $21,000 in grant funding through that program. The next thing we did was we invited older adults from our community to be part of a seniors working group that focused on frauds and scams, which resulted in us having 10 Protect Your Assets, what we call them, Protect Your Assets champions, who sit on our seniors working group. The plan there was for them to share their stories, which they were so at ease at doing. It was just remarkable. All of these stories that they shared about themselves, that they shared about family members, that they shared about friends. being victimized or being potentially victimized, sharing their ideas of the best way that we can engage other seniors in the community, just really gathering and picking their brains about the best practices we could potentially use in order to develop this program. That really was key to what our goal was. And then we invited relevant community agencies to join our group. So I'm sure most of you can think of what some of those agencies would look like in your own community. There would be RCMP. At the time, it was Victim Services. Victim Services has kind of changed as of late, but potentially, certainly the banking community. We had all of the banking, a member of the banking community come in and talk to us and give us some direction on what we were doing, and they were thrilled to see what we were doing. So inviting those relevant community agencies to come on board as well, to join this group and become part of our Protect Your Assets program. Next slide, Brooke. So gathering those key insights, and I mean, there was just so much great dialogue that went into all of this with the seniors. They were so hyped about all of this. There were a couple of them that shared that they thought they were just coming to a presentation on frauds and scams when they first came to our first meeting, but were really excited to learn that this was actually something that they were going to get involved in, or they could get involved in, and to become part of the solution. So they were very excited about that. And I think that one of the outcomes, which I haven't reported towards the end of this, but one of the other wonderful things we've seen is the increase in just skill level, confidence level of the individuals, the older adult champions that we have within our working group. They're just really excited to be part of the solution. So what they identified, and there were lots of things that they identified, but we've narrowed them down to 4 key areas. They felt that a simple, easy to understand and quick presentation was best for addressing an older adult audience, just to keep everybody's attention span. Nobody wants to sit there forever and just listen to somebody prattle on and on. It had to be quick and easy to understand. Some of the feedback was that we've had experts, if you will, come into our community or from our community do presentations on frauds and scams, but they tend to speak at an expert level to community, which leads a lot of people going away with statements like, and they shared this with us, I didn't really understand everything that was said. And so it talked about things that were at potentially a level using phrases and words that just weren't relevant to the community level conversation. The other thing was people identified that a best practice was for us to go to them. So finding ways of addressing older adults in our community, not always in a formal setting, but also in an informal setting. So us going to them, us going to where they are. We have part of our program, beyond the PowerPoint presentation, one of the resources we've developed is a full 10-panel flip chart that we've had professionally printed of our slides. So our champions can take those flip charts into areas where you don't have to worry about technology, you don't have to worry about a computer setup, you don't have to worry about a screen. They can take those flip charts into someone's living room and develop deliver the Protect Your Assets program just in a very informal setting. The other thing was that the resources and takeaways that we developed, that there needed to be something for people to take away with them so that they could go home and they could look and reference things after the fact. The reasoning behind that was twofold. One, because it's easier for us to kind of review information after the fact. And two, we didn't want people having to take notes during the sessions, because that can take away the focus of what we're trying to say as well. So developing those takeaway resources for people as well. And then it was identified that the peer-to-peer approach was needed. So we know that older adults rely heavily on their peers for their physical and social networks. And we know that they receive much of their information within that network. So providing those opportunities for our community champions to be identified through our lanyards, certainly, but we also have vests and jackets with our little donkey logo on them, so people can see that in the community and say, hey, cool logo, what's that about? And it can generate a conversation, or people can just generate conversations at a coffee shop, which we know older people do quite often. And then that just, those organic conversations just happen, but our Protect Your Assets champions now are in a position where they feel that they have some knowledge to share. So the third phase then was actually developing those resources. So our logo, which you see is our little donkey. I don't think it's a far stretch for you to understand why we chose a donkey with the word assets. And the seniors felt that this was a lighter way for us to kind of broach the subject of frauds and scams, is by having a little friendlier logo to identify with. So developing our logo, our brochure, we put together information cards for what to do that people could take away, our what to do magnets that people could just stick on their refrigerators or by the television or wherever they choose to be. That gives very simple steps on what to do should you feel you've become a victim of a fraud. We design credit card protectors, which are very, very popular with older adults. And then we have cloth tote bags that people can take, and we put those in grocery stores around the community. The food bank has a number of them to use as well with our logo on it. Our lanyards and vests, we developed a training manual so that our champions can be well trained with all of the resources in it. And then once they've completed that training, they get a certificate that proves that they've taken the training. And then, of course, our PowerPoint presentation, which is just very simply 12 slides and easy to go through. And that's what we're going to go through next, are our slides. And if anybody needs to stop me at any time and ask a question, please don't hesitate. And I'm going to take a sip of water. So this is our lead slide where we introduce the program, and we've seen this before. We saw this at the very beginning, and we also talk about where the funding came from and who our community partners have been. So next slide, Brooke. It's very important, or was very important, for us to have the input of the RCMP for many, many reasons. So we start our presentation with a message from our RCMP staff sergeant. We won't play the full message, but behind this title page here, a message from the RCMP, there is a recorded message from our RCMP staff sergeant that just validates the work that we're doing within the community from the RCMP. It also allows us to do the presentation within community without having to have the staff sergeant with us all of the time. So she would basically do the same talk every time we would do the presentation. So this was an easier way for us to just cart her along with us without having to have her physically present every time. It is, I think, about a 40-second or 50-second blurb that she does within the video behind this title page. And we certainly thank our CMP staff sergeant for the support she's given us for this program. So next slide, Brooke. We just won't listen to that just for time's sake. Our next slide is just it's an audio recording of what a fraud can sound like. And we just pulled this off the internet, and that's the classic CRA scam that I think every one of us has heard from time to time. And so we introduce that to people and let them listen to it. And it's really interesting because everybody nods their head, and some people chuckle at how silly the recording is now for them to hear, knowing that it is a scam. But it is really important for people to understand that people are still being victimized because of this scam. So this is an opportunity to generate, again, conversation within between the participants about what scams sound like and whether or not they've heard this. Again, we won't play it for time's sake. Next slide, Brooke. There is no shortage of statistics and facts that you can Google in relation to frauds and scams, but really important for people to see what the numbers look like. So we have in 2023, we took this information from the Canadian Anti-Fraud Centre. Important for people to see what this problem looks like on a national scale, and over $500 million in 2023 that was stolen from people in Canada. What's nice with our program is that we can go in every year now, we can update this slide with new facts from the Canadian Anti-Fraud Centre, so we can keep it relevant and up to date. One of the things we want people to understand, though, is even though that number is $54 million in 2023, Ipsos did a survey in 2023 also that leads us to believe that the numbers are much higher because only 11% of frauds and scams are even reported to police, and only 7% are reported to the Canadian Anti-Fraud Centre. So we know that that number is much, much higher. The other thing is that was interesting is that 43% of all Canadians that were polled said that they had been victimized by a fraud or a scam in their lifetime, which is incredible, which is an incredibly large number of people. That's not attempts, that's actually people who were victimized. Next slide, please, Brooke. So then we wanted to bring the statistics a little bit closer to home, and this is where the invitation for RCMP to be a part of our program is very important. Gathering those stats from RCMP. So in 2023, in our little community of under 10,000 people, there was $586,161 reported lost to frauds and scams in our community. And if we have the understanding that there's just a portion that's actually reported, we know that number is much larger. So this slide is very, it's shocking for people to see. It was shocking for us to see when our staff sergeant gave us these numbers. And it will be interesting to see how these numbers change over the course of the next couple of years with our program. Next slide, please, Brooke. So the objectives of our program are very simple. We want to bring awareness of frauds and scams, provide some simple tips for prevention, because prevention is the best response, and suggestions on what people can do if it happens to them. Next slide, Brooke. We go briefly through the types of frauds and scams that have been identified in our community as more common. And we don't necessarily go in depth with it during the presentation. We provide more information through our brochure and also through the additional handouts and takeaways that we give to people to take with them. So it is important for us, though, to understand that not all frauds and scams are happening online in the virtual world. They're still happening door to door. The gift card scams and those things, it's not just about online presence. Next slide, Brooke. So it was really cool during our planning sessions with our older adults where we realized very early that there was no way we could provide a list of every scam out there or every way and means of protecting yourself. So it was actually one of the adult seniors or one of the older adults who said to us, can we provide maybe a common checklist of what to look for then, which is what we did. So often, and these are all suggestions from our seniors, and we back them up with our RCMP staff sergeant and our banking people. So these are the common things that you can look for. Scammers will often pretend to be someone familiar to you. They'll often say that you've won a prize or that someone is in danger. They'll use threats. They'll attempt to isolate you, tell you not to talk to anybody about what's going on. Will give you a sense of urgency. And sometimes they'll ask you to purchase gift cards. And we see this quite often with our older adults in our community, is the purchase of those gift cards. Now, if you're familiar with gift cards, you probably know when you're being scammed if you're asked to pay for something using gift cards. But if you're an older adult who's never seen a gift card and you're asked to pay for something in this manner, it's unbelievable how many people are still being victimized through the use of gift cards. And so we want people to see a visual of what gift cards look like. So if they're asked to go to a store to purchase them, they know what to stay away from. You're being scammed. Next. Then we want to go through some really, really simple steps of what to do if it happens to you, or what you can do to protect yourself, sorry. So if you don't recognize the number that's calling you, just don't answer. Don't answer, let it go to voicemail. Work with your telephone provider to make sure that you have whatever protections they can offer you to screen those calls, etc. Just hang up. If you feel like it's not right, you just hang up and don't feel bad about it. Often people will feel that they have to be polite. They have to be respectful to people, especially if someone introduces themselves as someone with authority. Don't feel like you have to be polite and just hang up. If it's important enough, they'll call back or they'll leave a message. And do never feel pressured by anyone to do something. So just think about all of the things that you can do, and it's as simple as just hanging up the phone sometimes and not engaging in conversation. Tools you can use, make sure you have call control on your phone. Let all calls go to voicemail unless you recognize the phone number. Talk to your phone company and your bank about prevention programs that you can use and have on your accounts and for your phone. Make yourself known to your banking people, talking to them about what fraud protections they can help you with and have on your account. Okay, Brooke? So we also want people to know that despite everything, these criminals are very, very good at what they do. And there's even RCMP officers that get scammed. And it can really happen to anyone because you get busy and you click a link because you think you actually have a parcel coming and you get a text message and you click the link. It can really happen to anyone. It's important for people to understand not to feel ashamed or embarrassed. That's what these criminals really rely on, is people's embarrassment, their fear that you're not going to say anything to anybody about anything. And that's how you get pulled into that repetitive, ongoing, what they hope will be that ongoing spiral of fraudulent activity. So don't feel ashamed or embarrassed to reach out. Know who to call in the community. And that's where we give the 3 really simple steps that if it does happen to you, or if you think it's happened to you, contact your bank, contact the RCMP, and talk to someone you trust and is willing to help. So just stay on the slide for a second, Brooke. I think it's important. People think that if they've been defrauded out of money, that they can go to the RCMP and report that, and a whole criminal investigation will be started. And And there are certain criteria that have to be met for the RCMP to investigate. One, there has to be a loss of identity. So you have to have given personal information to a fraudster, or you have to have lost money. So an attempt to fraud doesn't get a file open. But what we were hearing from people in the community is there was a bit of a dismissiveness by law enforcement that if those criteria weren't met, then people were just sent away with the phone number to the Canadian Anti-Fraud Centre, which was not helpful for people, because if you've ever called the Canadian Anti-Fraud Centre, and I don't want to dismiss the great work they do, you can be put on hold for a very long time, which can be quite cumbersome for any individual, not to mention an older adult. So trying to help people understand what that looks like when they do call the RCMP to report, and also having conversation with the RCMP about how they might be able to help support individuals better when they do report a fraud or scam, because it can be very scary for people. Next slide, please, Brooke. So that wraps up what our 12 slides look like for our community presentation. Again, this is an awareness program. We are not experts. We're not cybersecurity experts. We are opening up dialogue in our community to help people feel safer, to feel more comfortable talking about their experience with frauds and scams, and helping them feel more comfortable in reaching out to an appropriate agency to have a conversation should they feel that they've been victimized. Even if they haven't given money, you need to be able to talk to somebody about, because it can be very scary. So that would wrap up our presentation, and then we would open it up to questions from the community participants. So I'm going to hand it over to Brooke at this point, unless someone has a question about what I shared with them to this point. I'll hand it to you, Brooke.
Oh. Well, thank you, Charlene. It's a really great overview of our program, how we began, how we started, and what we put out into the community. FCSS by nature is preventative. And a lot of the programming that we offer to our community, there's outcomes and measures, there's reporting always. And I'm sure it's not just for FCSS, right? For many organizations, we want to measure the success so that we can identify future gaps and how successful our programming has been. So after each presentation offered to a community, we give out surveys to every participant. We have 4 different questions on there where we try to get feedback to measure our success. This really did serve as a really helpful tool to share with us, comments. It allowed people to even open up and share things that they wouldn't normally share in a group setting, but maybe on a piece of paper where nobody else will be there listening. That place of vulnerability, they shared comments with us and their own experiences. And that in itself is really, really valuable information so that we can track the success of the program that we've been doing. We've been gathering this data for this past year, and it really helps us to improve how we want to keep this moving forward. What are new trends coming in? What are we hearing from our community members, right? We use these different insights to create this change that's needed in our community. Positive outcomes that we have received to this date. So we're looking at a year. In a whole year, in the year 2024, our Hinton champions delivered 13 different community presentations. That would be anything from our champions went to town council, they did a delegation to council, they shared the work that we're doing in our community. March is Fraud Prevention Month. So we really amped up a lot of our presentations during the February, March months, where we targeted seniors' homes, seniors' lodges. We went to the older adults in our community, trying to get our presentation out there. We also got requested different presentations, Alberta Healthy Aging, just various different presentations that people had been requested from our champions. We also did 4 different information fairs. So those are great opportunities where we would set up a booth with our brochures, with our promo items, and we would be able to have that face-to-face, one-on-one conversation with people going by. They were seniors fairs, they were wellness fairs, they were information fairs. So a really great opportunity for that higher foot traffic so that we could get our message out there to the public. So from our survey results, from our surveys that we got from every presentation, we just thought we would share the impact. 68% of our participants reported that the presentation was beneficial. So people were learning from the material that we were presenting to them and that it was helpful for them to learn. 61% said that they were more aware of the types of common frauds and scams. So they're learning. And that's what this is about. We're increasing the awareness and their learning capacity of what's out there in our community. 59% of individuals felt more aware of the ways to protect themselves from fraud or scams. So the tips and the tools that we're offering in our presentation, that toolbox that we're trying to build up for people to feel better protected, it is really helping. And 72% are more aware of the steps that they should take if they do fall victim. So that number is really impressive. That awareness piece of what our presentation is offering for the community. Just thought we'd share comments from the participants through our surveys. How the presentation was delivered very well, factual, very beneficial. We can see that the program is beneficial for all. The presenters seem well informed. It's tough to know what's out there. There's so many scams, right? So people are really feeling the impact of the prevalence of frauds and scams in our community, and how we're very informative and such a caring environment. We try to hold space because just like any victim, when you're put in that place and you know that scenario comes up again, a lot of those emotions can come up again of being victim to a criminal offense. And we hold space for everybody in our presentations because the path can be bumpy for all, right? Sometimes people lose their whole entire life savings, and it's important that we approach our presentations with fairness. So some changes to our CMP engagement with the victims of fraud and scams. So as Charlene had mentioned previous, through our presentations, we have heard this feedback that victims were not overly feeling the warmth from the side of the RCMP, and that's where we had developed that relationship with our staff sergeant, and we were able to have a conversation with her. What we try to do in our presentations is holding space in that caring environment. We ask that that frontline staff at the RCMP can do the same. She had a wonderful conversation with the front lead staff. They took stacks of our brochures. Everybody's informed of just how that we can create that caring environment, because it's a really traumatic experience for someone that's lost $500 to $20,000 or even more, right? So how can we create that caring capacity? which is really exciting. Our next bullet here is that we do have an RCMP member on our Protect Our Assets group that is dedicated to the investigation of fraud. So she's been trained specifically in frauds and scams. So she's partnering with us to help us identify the trends in our community. And again, that validation piece that maybe we can take out an RCMP number on our presentations. It definitely brings the credibility to the presentation, what we offer. Also, take requests for training in other communities interested in Protect Your Assets. So I think that'll lead into our next slide here. So just to share a little bit, we are offering some online training. Our Protect Your Assets program has been so successful over the past year and a half since we received this grant funding. More and more communities are finding out about this awareness campaign for older adults, and it's catching on. And I think it's due to the high prevalence of frauds and scams happening everywhere right now. So we want to continue to do this work. Just last week, we had a champion meeting here at Hinton FCSS. From when our project began, we still have a strong crew of over 10 dedicated seniors that are still with us. This work is not going anywhere, and we're really excited and happy to continue to support our champions of the ever-changing frauds and scams that we have here in Hinton. We're developing and delivering this Protect Your Assets Train the Trainer. So with the interest province-wide, we are really excited to offer this Train the Trainer program so that other communities across Alberta can also share this program with their older adults as well. We have developed, much just like the presentation Charlene went through, the participating communities will have access to the PowerPoint presentation, to our brochures, to our pamphlets, to all of our logos and everything like that, to be able to use in their own communities. We've developed a letter of understanding, just an informal contact where we work together with surrounding communities to create a base point of the project that we want to put out there and the commitment that they're willing to do. We do hope that other communities find older adult champions, much just like we have in Hinton, because the more power behind the message is important. To do this just one-on-one can be hard to get that message out there, but working as a team, as we know, that information can get out there a whole lot faster and a whole lot wider. So, with our 13 presentations that we offered this year, we were able to rotate through that cycle of all of our over 10 champions that we have here in Hinton. So having a team of champions really benefits a community so that you can all collaborate and get that message and the awareness campaign. We do have 2 training dates coming up in January. One is January the 17th, it's a Friday, and then another one is Thursday, January the 30th. We're offering a 3-hour Train the Trainer, where mostly at this time we have FCSS organizations that have joined. It does not have to be specific to FCSSs. Any organizations out there can join this as a commitment to getting this information out there to their own community. As Charlene had mentioned, we have interest from over 30 to 40 communities just in Alberta alone. And that's province-wide. So it's such a wonderful opportunity for all the hard work of our older adults and what they've created here in Hinton to now be shared across our province and protecting our older adults, which is so important. We are going to be establishing the Protect Your Assets Community of Practice. It's an annual meetup for the communities to all to come together. We find that it's really important that much just like our surveys that we offer at the end of each presentation, but once a year, all communities that have taken Train the Trainer will all greet and gather together and share the trends and the results from their survey. What are the older adults finding as trends in your community, and how do they differ? And how can we continue to manipulate this program to meet the needs of our communities? Yeah, I do see the question in there. What are the dates for the January training? What I'll do is that I will most certainly send that over to Helen and Kate, and perhaps when you send out the meeting notes and everything, we'll put it all in there as a package. Just thank you for that question. So that we're really excited that this program is progressing forward and that we're able to share it with more and more people. So that is the end of our presentation. Just leave the last slide up here as right now I do oversee the Protect Your Assets program. I'm really happy to be able to co-facilitate this with Charlene, as she was part of the Protect Your Assets program from the very beginning. So you see the very beginning lens of our program, and now where I am starting to take off it off with Charlene. So it's been a collaborative effort between Charlene and I and our very dedicated team of local champions in our community. So at this time,
Great.
I'd like to open it up to any questions that anyone may have at this period.
I was just going to just relay a couple of questions that are in the chat. Charlene's answered them, but just for the group to have that information. Pam was wondering about knowing about the effectiveness of adding phone numbers to the national do not call list. And Charlene was saying some people have done it and found it effective, and other people have not found it that effective with it. But it's good to use every tool that is out there. And Jennifer had just asked if you were going to be comparing pre and post money lost through fraud in Hinton. And Charlene was saying yes, that those. And I see a hand up from Tina. Go ahead, Tina.
Hi. So I always come at these things from the Low German perspective. So a lot of our Low German community would be super vulnerable, like our seniors are in mainstream. And what would be the chances that I would have permission to make a video out of this content and have a Low German voiceover that I can share out to our Low German community broadly?
Well, I don't have an answer for you just right off the hop, Tina.
Okay.
I think that that's a wonderful idea, and I think it speaks to the need to potentially going forward have other have other cultures that also have the ability to do that. I won't say no, because I think that that's a great idea. I think if you want to connect with Brooke, and then we can have a more robust conversation about what that looks like. What we're really trying to do with this is, because there's been so much interest in it, we're trying to, I don't want to use the word control it, because we want people to share it. We want people to share this information, but we also want to be really responsible with the information. And so having it blanketed across as many communities as we can responsibly is really our goal, so that it doesn't put us in any kind of a position where, we're liable for anything that's shared. So we're working with, and we have worked with our legal people here at the town of Hinton which is why we have that letter of understanding that we want people to go through. So I won't say no. I think that's a great idea. I think that's a great idea for a lot of other cultures as well. So just connect with Brooke and we'll have a broader conversation about that, if that's
Sounds
okay.
good. Absolutely.
Great.
Yeah, we've done little snippets of videos in the past in Low German like that, and I'd be happy to take the training sessions first. And I am very well connected with the FCSS here in this area, who also have Low German speaking staff that could verify and all that stuff. But yes, I will connect with Brooke. Thank you.
That's awesome. Thank you. Thank you.
Just seeing a question in the chat here from Ginger about will the package that's sent also include details of the PYS Community Champion opportunities and train the trainer? So the slides will be sent out with our follow-up email from this group as from this session, as well as the recording of it. So that's what the information will be in there, Ginger. And if you're wanting more specific information, again, I think reach out to Brooke there that with the contact information. Any other questions? Just we've got about 5 minutes left in our meeting now. Hey, great. Well, thanks so much, Brooke and Charlene. I think I just love the new relationship that you have with the RCMP, who are really, on that legal side, leading that work. And so to have a closer working relationship with them, I think is essential in the work that you're doing. And so wonderful to see this really. It's an asset-based community development project where you're using those skills of your older adults in your community. Really, really great to see there. Maybe I'll just bring up our resources slide there. We can switch over again, Brooke. There we go. So just a few resources that we'd heard about. There's a conference from Wales with the Rural and Healthcare Wales Conference, and it's really looking at rural health, well-being, and care. So it's free and online. It's very early in the morning, but just for people's information. And also Healthcare Excellence Canada has recently released their 2023 to 2024 impact report, which I think really shares a lot of information around that organization, individuals who are delivering programs kind of across the country. Some interesting programming that is happening there. And then we will be sending out also our, oops, that skipped over the slide that I wanted. There we go. Oh, it's not working. Anyway, we will be sending out our project update just to show the kind of work that we've been accomplished in the last quarter for our grant project here. And then this is our contact information there. So I think that's everything for today. If there's any other questions, thank you everyone for joining. And thank you so much, Brooke and Charlene, really informative presentation today. Have a good rest of your week, everyone.